Hello, I'm Boris. Today I will continue the demo series of building Spring Boot RESTful service on AWS. In this video, I will show you the blue-green deployment. Before I go to the demonstration, let me explain a little bit more about the system architecture in the blue-green deployment. This diagram shows you the system architecture. You can see that the user will access the RESTful service through this application load balancer, the ALB. The ALB will direct the traffic to the ECS task, which is in target group 1. Here, the CodeDeploy will start the blue-green deployment. It deploys a new task in the second target group. It will instruct the ALB to shift the traffic to the new target group. It will then terminate the original task in target group 1 after the deployment. You should notice that the host port is automatically assigned during the deployment. We call this the dynamic port mapping. With the dynamic port mapping, we can run multiple tasks on the ECS service. Your container will automatically receive a host port in the ephemeral port range. The ALB will then direct the traffic to the container through this assigned port. I will show you all these details in the demo. There are 7 steps in the demonstrations. The first thing we need to do is to create an IAM role for CodeDeploy. This is the AWS Management Console. We should first go to IAM Dashboard. Then we go to Roles. And now we click the Create Role button. You should select AWS Service type here. Then we choose CodeDeploy. In the use case, we choose CodeDeploy ECS. It will provide the permission to read SV, Lambda function, and also provide the update permission to ECS Service. Okay, then we click Next. Now we can see the details of the policy here. We can see that it provided permission for CloudWatch, ECS, ELB, Lambda, SV, and also SNS. Then we click Next, and then Next again. Now we should provide a name here. I call it Map Service ECS Deployed Role. Then I click Create Role. Okay, we can see that the IAM role has been created. Now, let's go to the second step. We should create an application load balancer, the ALB. We can create the ALB in EC2. So I type EC2 here. Okay, it is the EC2 console. So I go to the menu on the left hand side and then click Load Balancer. Then we create Load Balancer. We should choose Create Application Load Balancer. I call it MyALB. You should select the VPC. I will select all my availability zones. Then we can click Next. We'll go to config the security group. I will create a new security group for this ALB. You will see in a later step that I will make reference to this security group. I call the group My ALB Sec Group. For the description, I just type security group for my ALB. Okay, it should allow port 80. For the target group, I provide the first target group the name TG1. For the health check setting, I just type test in the path. You can check from the source code that I have created a test endpoint for health check. So I just typed test here. Okay, let's look at the advanced health check setting. Let me increase the timeout value to 10 seconds. Okay, for the register target, I just leave it blank. Then I click Next, and then click Create. Okay, we can see that the ALB and the target group has been created. Okay, let's go to the third step. I will create a security group for ECS cluster. It will allow the traffic from ALB. Here is the EC2 console. Then you click Security Group on the left-hand side menu. Then we can click Create Security Group. You should provide a name here. I call it My ECS Security Group. I need to add the description. My ECS Security Group. Okay, we need to add the inbound route. I need to input the ephemeral port range. It is for the dynamic port mapping. It will randomly assign the port within the ephemeral port range. It will map to the container port. For the source, it's very important that we should allow only security group from the ALB. So I select my ALB security group, then we click Create. Okay, we can see that the security group has been created. Okay, for the next step, we should create an ECS cluster. Okay, this is the AWS Management Console. I type ECS here, and then we select cluster. Okay, if you have a cluster which has been created in previous video, I suggest you to delete it so that it will not confuse you. Here we select Create Cluster, and then I select EC2 Linux with networking cluster template, and then I click Next. I type the name My New ECS Cluster. I choose T2 Micro as the instance type. I only need one instance. Okay, for the networking section, it is very important that we should select all the subnet in each availability zones. For the security group, we should select the security group which has been created in steps 2. I choose my ECS security group. Okay. Then we click create. You can see that it is creating the ECS service. And after the creation, we can click the View Cluster button. Okay. We can see that the cluster is active now. Okay, let's go to the next steps to create an ECS task definition. We should click ECS task definition on the left-hand side menu. You may see the previous created task here. I click create task definition. Here I choose EC2 launch type. I click next. I input the name new math service task. Then we need to add a new container. I click add container. We can see that we need to input the Docker image URI here. So I go to ECR and click Elastic Container Registry. We have already created a repository for the RESTful API in previous video. So I just copy the URI and then switch back to add the container. I click add container again and I provide the name math service container. Okay, I just paste the URI and I specify to use the latest tag here. Okay, for the hard memory limit, I set it to 200. For the port mapping, it is very important that we should leave the host port to be empty, because we want to enable the dynamic port mapping. And for the container port, I type port 8080. Then we click add button. Okay, then I scroll it down and click the create button. Okay, the task definition has been created. Okay, let's go to the next step. I'm going to create an ECS service to launch the container based on the task definition we have just created before. Okay, let's go to my new ECS cluster. In the Service tab, we click Create button. Now, we should choose the EC2 launch type. I should select the new task definition. For the service name, I call it my new service. Then the number of tasks is set to 1. For the deployment, it is very important that we should select blue-green deployment. I will choose all at once in the deployment configuration. Okay, for the load balancing, I should select Application Load Balancer. Then we should listen to port 80. I disable the test listener here. For the first target group, I choose TG1. For the second target group, I give the name TG2. For the health check path, I just type test because I have said that I have created a testing endpoint. Then we click next. Okay, we don't need auto scaling here. And finally, we can click the create button. It takes some time for creating all the things. Okay, we can see that the service and the CodeDeploy application has been created. Now we can test the RESTful service. I go to ALB and copy the DNS name. I click copy. I can just test the health check endpoint in the browser. We can see the health check is succeeded. We can also test it by Postman. I paste the URL here, then I set the two input parameters. Number 1 is set to 3, and number 2 I set to 5. We can test 3 plus 5 equal to 8. Okay, we can see that the RESTful service works fine. Okay, let's go to the next step. I will manually trigger the blue-green deployment from the CodeDeploy application. So the 7th step is to create a CodeDeploy application. Before we go to CodeDeploy, let's look at the target group. We can see that there's two target groups, TG1 and TG2. The container is running on TG1. And TG2 is empty. You can see that in TG1 the target is healthy. And after I trigger the blue-green deployment manually, the traffic will shift to the new container in TG2. Okay, now we go to CodeDeploy. I click application. Here we can see that a new CodeDeployed application has been created. It is created when we set up the ECS service. You can see that a deployment group has been created. Now we can see that it will deploy to my new ECS cluster. TG1 and TG2 is the target group for load balancing. When you click create deployment, when creating the deployment, we need to input the abstract YAML file. This abstract YAML file is used to manage the life cycle for the deployment. You can specify different events in the files. You can upload the file in S3 bucket or just use the online editor to create one. Now I just use the online editor to create the abstract YAML file. I have already created a simple one in the source directory. You can find the abstract YAML file on GitHub. I just copy and paste it to the online editor. And we can see that we need to provide the task definition ARN here, and also the container name. So for the task definition ARN, we can find it in the task definition JSON file. You click on the JSON tab and you will find the ARN here. You can just copy it, then we paste it, then we can click the Create Deployment button. Now we can see that the blue-green deployment has been started. Now the traffic is still 100% on the original task set. It will gradually shift the traffic to the new task set. Okay, we can see that the blue-green deployment has been completed. It is 100% complete on the shifting traffic. Now the new task is serving all the traffic. We can go to the target group now. Let's go to EC2 and choose the target group. We can see that now TG2 is registered with an ECS instance, and it is healthy. Let's go back to TG1. We can see that there is still a registered target in TG1. It is because the CodeDeploy will not terminate the original task set immediately. It allows some buffer for you to make sure that the new task is running without any problem. Now we can test the RESTful service in browser. It works fine. Also, we can check the API in Postman. I test it with 9+5. And then I click send. It equals 14, so it works perfectly. Okay, now we go back to CodeDeploy, and I will terminate the original task set. We can see that the deployment is finished now. Now we go back to the target group. Now TG1 will not register any target anymore. Now the deployment has been completed successfully. Okay, that's it. In the next video, I will create a code pipeline to automate all the tasks. You can see that the blue-green deployment will trigger once I have committed the source code in the next video. Okay, I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you, bye bye.